Elkshape podcast number 5 with me, Dan Staten, and today's guest is Joe Roeder out of Ellensburg, Washington. We'll say I don't know much about Joe. You guys are going to learn about him with me, but we have a mutual friend, and actually my buddy Josh Potter has been telling me about your escapades for quite a few years, and all I know is that you get after it when it comes to elk hunting, public ground, and arguably one of the harder states to kill an elk, Washington State, and in the backcountry, you do it with a bow, and it's not a fluke. You do it year after year, Joe. So, Joe, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me so much, Dan. Appreciate it, and appreciate what you do with Elkshape for everybody, too.
Well, right on, man. Joe, as per usual, tell me and everybody else about you as much as you can. I mean, you know, how you got into hunting, what your day job is, just any good background information to start off with.
Well, we'll start with kind of a hunting pedigree, which is extremely humble. I grew up in Eatonville, Washington, which is right at the foot of Mount Rainier on the southwest corner. So I grew up, fortunately, in pretty great elk country. A lot of elk kind of to our south. This would be southeast, like Randall, Washington, and then just outside Mount Rainier National Park, and not far from the Goat Rocks Wilderness. My first wilderness hunts were in the Goat Rocks, and I grew up in great elk country. In fact, I could hunt right from my back door, which wasn't not great elk hunting right out the back door, but I grew up adjacent to big blocks of state timberland, and we'd have elk there from time to time. So starting about 14, I got to carry a bow in the woods. No parents, no adults, just got to go roam like a mountain bike right from my house, and chase elk. Didn't have a lot of success. Finally killed I killed a cow elk when I was 14, and then another one when I was 16, and then I tried to pursue bull elk, and, I had very little success. Just really tough time doing it, and really struggled for a lot of years, and then, finally I started elk hunting. I don't even know what year it was, like in the early 90s. And, finally in like 2002, I killed my first bull, which was a, do-it-yourself backcountry public land bull, wilderness bull. And, from that point forward, I was just hooked, and finally felt like I kind of had a more of a system, it was more fair, where you put in X amount and you can expect X amount back in return. Versus I'd grown up hunting a lot more of the, hopscotch and private land, and gosh, you'd bump into a fence, and of course the bull's bugling on the other side of the fence, and, it's kind of a waiting game, and there's a lot of chance. So killed my first bull on a wilderness hunt with my good buddy Jeremy, and he was unable to get an elk, but that was like our first real true backcountry hunt together, and we were just hooked from that point. And just kind of the rest is history. I'm a stay-at-home guy. I'm at Washington State. I've got 3 kids that are, approaching their teenage years now, so they're in sports, and they've got their own agendas, and frankly, I work as a guide and outfitter, so I don't make enough, I'd say, discretionary income to warrant going out of state, because I can do it once, but, going out of state and tag fees and travel costs and time away from work and stuff adds up. So I've always been under kind of the strategy that if I discover things in my home state, I can hopefully, with the exception of drawing, more premium take, I can capitalize on that intel year after year after year. And, hopefully at the end of, after 10 or 15, 20 years, you've learned enough to make good choices and put yourself in a situation of success. Whereas, if I cruise across the country to, Montana or something, I can't necessarily do that every single year. And, I make some good gains here that I can capitalize on.
Wow. Okay. So when you're not hunting, what's your real life look like?
Well, I'm the main focus. What I do is I'm a fly fishing guide and outfitter. I've been doing that for 18 years now, and I went to college at Central Washington University in Ellensburg, the Wildcats. But I went to college here and worked as a guide when I was in college, and never thought I'd end up doing it for a job. I graduated with a degree, essentially with natural resource management skills and background, and that's kind of where I thought I would go. I fought forest fires for a couple of years and got bored of that. couple of years flying around on helicopters, fighting fires for our state DNR. And while that was great, I really wanted to go be a guide. Wound up being a guide in college, got done with college, and my sweetheart still had a year to finish up before she graduated, so I just kept guiding. And she finally got done, and then neither of us wanted to move from Ellensburg, so we just love it here. And so I just kept guiding, and somehow I was able to turn it into a career and take my equivalent passion just for fly fishing to being out on big fishing big western rivers. I was able to take that passion and combine it with a passion just for business leadership, and have been able to establish a stable career as a guide. And now at Red's Fly Shop and Canyon River Ranch Resort, we dabble in hunting quite a bit too, primarily bird hunting, some deer hunting. I get to guide bighorn sheep once in a while, trips depending on if guys that get the permit want some help or not. But we do a little bit of everything here, and we do e-commerce. I travel pretty much all over the world hosting and coordinating fly fishing trips. So this year I'll go to Cuba, Russia, Mexico, British Columbia, go all over the place just doing fishing trips and putting trips together for guys. And so I get to play pretty hard. I'm very, very fortunate.
Wow, that sounds like a sweet gig. So
it's
not too bad. And that's something that you started and you own by yourself?
No, I'm a small partner in the business. It's we haven't compared notes, but I think it's probably the biggest fly fishing outfitter in the Northwest, if not the entire West. We're really fortunate to have a really unique location in the Yakima River Canyon, where we have a very large fly shop that we ship stuff all over the world. So we have a really unique location, so it gives us a ton of fishing experience because we can do all sorts of different species here in Washington State because it's so diverse, from steelhead, salmon to bass. Lots of experience, and so that gives us a kind of a marketing edge, I'd say, against a lot of competitors. So, we get to do a lot of unique things here on this property, and I'm just a small partner in it, but we have a large resort, a lodge, and we have a bird hunting game preserve, I guess you will, sporting place course, 3D archery range. We do a lot of stuff here at the resort, but I'm a partner in that.
That's cool that you have a stake in the business. That's awesome, and it's super motivating to have like a chunk of the ownership and have a say in the vision and build it from the ground up. Sounds like, and man, pretty exciting traveling the world and the e-commerce as well. That's awesome. I will tell you this. There's a common denominator with a lot of guys that kill elk on the public ground side, and it seems to be autonomy in their schedule. So I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, how much time do you allocate for elk hunting, like when the season starts? Because Washington has notably a very small window of archery season. I know you're a bow hunter. So is that what you take the whole season and go, like how much time do you allocate for your hunt?
Yeah, so I mean, of course it starts, naturally it's year round. So the hunt, I have a philosophy: the hunt begins before the hunt begins, and I laugh because it's like you don't want to give away all the trade secrets, right? But I just gained so much information from guys like Elk Nut and you or any guys that are willing to share information. But for me, I think if you don't have a really good idea of where you're going to be on opening, if you're not listening to bugles in the dark on opening morning, you didn't do your homework. So I'm starting really hard in July, August, September, early September even. I'm trying to scout really hard. I'm getting into the mountains 2 days before the season. I'm going to take probably and hunt the first 5, and then put some flex room in the middle of the season for catching up on work, seeing kids' soccer games, that kind of stuff, returning emails, being domestic responsibilities are critical. If you ever want freedom in hunting, you better get your personal life straight and make sure that's taken care of. Same with work life. But I throw about 4 days in the middle that are flex time. We might kill a bull early in the season, or we might get snowed out, rained out. Something might cause me to need to, retreat. If we get horrible weather, I don't care how tough you are, there's times you're going to get weathered out of the mountains and the Cascades. The freezing rain and snow mix we get, it can be brutal in September. And I bivvy hunt primarily. I do employ a wet weather camp sometimes, but if we're bivvying, we may need to retreat, from time to time. So with those 4 flex days in the middle, if I got to go in for 3 and come out for a day or 2, dry out, recharge, and then go back in, I can. So I throw 4 flex days in the middle, and then I'll usually hunt 4 on the end. So I'll hunt 9 to 10 days of actual season, typically, and then a day or 2 on the front. I want to be in the woods early. I want to find the elk before daylight on opening morning.
Yeah, I really like what you said. If you don't know or have bulls bugling in the dark opening day, you didn't do your homework. I think that's a cool statement, and it's so factual. Well, then let's set the stage for. I mean, we're gonna backfill with what you do year round because that's why I have you on. I know you have an awesome work ethic, and I love that. But let's paint a picture for those that don't know you and me included. Tell us a little bit about what your hunting style is, the terrain. Obviously, we don't want to give away where you hunt. You made that super clear to me. I'm pumped. I respect that. But give our listeners kind of a snapshot as to what, altitude or what kind of terrain, what kind of country. Are you hunting out of your backpack? Are you spike camping? How far hiking? How many miles do you cover a day or a week? I mean, let us kind of get an idea of how physical and daunting your hunt is.
It's when I was in my 20s, I didn't realize how bad a shape I was in. And I'll tell the story. I mean, I've got so many stories of failure, but I hiked into an area, and I might hunt anywhere from 2 or 3 miles from the pickup to as much as 15. It ranges a lot, and it sounds like a long ways in, like, wow, you're 15 miles in. That's a handful of hours of just walking. It really isn't, when you weigh it out, you just take one step at a time. It's not that big a deal, but I've learned to pace myself a little bit more too. I'm 38 years old now, and I'm using my energy more wisely. But I hiked in 6 miles, day before season, and it was getting to be in the afternoon, and I just crushed it going in. I'm like, I'm going to get in there with plenty of time to scout, etc. Of course, I walked myself into the ground. I was in my mid-20s, and I got in there, and I remember looking for a place to camp that was, flat enough to sleep, and I'm like, oh, well, here's a spring. I better get some water, and I start pumping water, and I look up on the hill while I'm pumping water, and just randomly, like an act of God, this great big bull. I mean, it had, it was definitely a mature 6x6, just is watching me pump water, and I'm like, oh my God, there's a huge bull right here, and I'm just pumping water, and I don't really know what to do. It's the night before season, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna get him for sure. And I was by myself, and bull walks away, not really alarmed. It was pretty shadowy. I didn't know that he was really spooked, and walks away. So I'm like, okay, great. I'm on it. I'm gonna sleep right here. I think I probably slept on a bunch of rocks or something because I was so excited, and I didn't really want to move around much with the bull there. So I slept somewhere. Typically a very uncomfortable spot.
Yep.
And I hunt the next day, which was opening day. And I hunt a pretty good-sized loop, and I got to about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and I hadn't heard a bugle, I hadn't seen an elk, and I hunted the bottom of this basin, and I ended up, I like a lot of guys, I read Cameron Haynes' book, Backcountry Bow Hunting, when it hit the press. I think it was in the late 90s or early 2000s, something like that. But he had a quote in there that's always stuck with me, that it's easy to spin foibles into fables. And to me, that is like, those are words of gold, because that's exactly what happened to me. I had this giant bull in this basin, and just because I couldn't find him opening day, I was like, oh, the rut's not on, he left the basin. You just make up all this stuff, and the fact is you're just tired, exhausted, and you're uninspired. And I ended up walking out that afternoon of opening day to think I was going to find a new area.
Oh.
And because it was an unproven spot for me, but I'd seen a bull there, and I know that I just tired myself out way too much going way too hard the first day, got exhausted, and I never forgot that because I was younger then, and I'd only killed like a bull or 2 at that point. And that has stuck with me always to, be mentally grounded and tough and not spin foibles into fables. Just because they're not bugling now doesn't mean they won't tomorrow morning or tonight. I've had hunts change, momentum in a matter of seconds, where no bugles for 2 days. I don't hunt areas with high elk, populations typically. Uh, no elk for 2 days. You get a big response. 45 seconds later, you see that rack floating through the timber, and things change in a hurry. And so to me, that's been one of the memory that sticks with me. But as far as like ground that we hunt, it's I hunt the Cascades, big high steep ground. Typically, elk are going to be found, 2/3 to 3/4 the way up, the biggest, most heavily timbered slopes. I do surprisingly well on south-facing slopes. I would say that's, kind of a tidbit of information I found to be really helpful. At least in Washington, everything's pretty damp. In the Cascade, it's not like a lot of the other western states that are much more arid, where they have to have north-facing slopes, but the south-facing slopes are still damp enough, and they get sun exposure, and there's typically more feed. But we bivouac primarily. The last couple of years, we've gotten weathered so hard in some of the hunts we've done, my partner and I, that we finally got titanium goat brand TP and stove, and now we set up a wet weather camp. So we set that up, and sometimes we don't see it the entire season. We just set it up in a fairly strategic area. I pack that in, 10 days in advance, with my horses, or just backpack it in. But there's been literally years that we've never used it, and we definitely used it this year because we got into horrific weather. But most of the time, Dan, we're moving real light, real light and tight. We've done different tent systems, but we choose to just use a backpacker's tarp and 9x9 Kelty Noah's tarp. They're $90. I haven't found anything better yet, and we prefer just sleeping on the ground in bivy sacks under a backpacker's tarp so that we get air circulation, and we can eat dinner in our muddy boots and our wet rain gear. Whereas a tent, we're dragging muddy boots and wet packs and wet clothes, and they're inevitably everything you need is outside the tent.
Yep.
Just makes it easier to cook, get dressed, and everything else. And yes, it can be pretty miserable when it's wet and breezy, but we tend to find that the fastest to set up, and we can set it on uneven ground and make do with that. So that's typically our system, is moving every day, just a backpacker's tarp and bivy sacks.
Okay, so with your backpack system, a couple of nerd questions. Just obviously, I want to know what backpack you're running, and then you're in on some elk. Let's say in the evening. The advantage obviously is you don't got to pull out. You can hunt till absolute last light. And then I want to know, do you kind of back out a little ways off the elk to camp, or do you just set up shop wherever you left off and pick up in the morning? And then obviously I'm thinking Cascades, lots of water everywhere, but I could be dead wrong. So water systems as well. So backpack, where do you sleep, and how do you decide where to sleep, and then water?
Yeah, great question. So backpacks, you're going to laugh. So I've got 3 different packs that I use, just depending, honestly, kind of how I'm shooting with my pack on and, what I'm bringing. But man, I've got this pack, this ancient Badlands 2800. It's the oldest 2800 they ever made. And that's probably my favorite pack because it's got compatible wings. I've packed hindquarters of bulls on it. It's got a lot of mojo. I've killed a lot of bulls wearing that thing. I've sent it back to Badlands twice, and they've had to repair things on it, and they've been awesome. Like, they get it back in like a week. It's scary, how fast they get it done for me. But that's a Badlands 2800 because it's just incredibly, modular. And it's ancient. I invest a lot of good gear. I mean, we got the high-end optics and boots and Sitka gear and all that. But that pack has stayed with me for a long time. And I'm not in love with it, but I use it quite a bit. And then I use one from Wilderness Pack Specialties that I really like. They make it's all made in the USA. They make some super hardcore packs. The Outdoorsman pack system, I believe they do all the bags for the Outdoorsman style frame system, which I've used the Outdoorsman pack as well. I don't shoot as well with that one on. So depending, I hunt with the trad bow as well. I'm not all trad bow, but I killed my bull last year with the trad bow. And so my trad bow, I need the pack that has the most flexibility for me. But I use that Wilderness Pack Specialties pack a bit. I have an old Sitka 45 that I'm not in love with. I don't even think they make them anymore. I think they kind of gave up. I'm not in love with the yoke and how it handles heavy weight, but I love all the pockets. As corny as that sounds, I'm really comfortable with that. If I'm my pack weight, my wet pack weight's in the mid to high 30s for like 5 days, and it handles that weight really well. I don't like freighting on it, but I can get hind quarter to the truck with that pack if I need to. But I run three packs, just depending on, like I said, if I'm shooting my trad bull, my compound, that makes a little bit of a difference. As far as water systems go, there's water everywhere. We in the Pacific Northwest, man. I mean, there's water shooting out of the hill all over the place, with the exception of some of the highest peaks that we might be on if we're trying to hunt deer as well. But the water system that I use is, I actually ran without water quite a bit this year, and literally I use an MSR trail shot water purifier that I can drink right out of, and I can literally just drink like every hour if I can drink. Depending on what I'm doing and how hot it is and stuff, that's obviously going to play a role. But I'll use that MSR trail shot to just drink as we go, and I can just pump straight in my mouth, get a belly full of water, and move. But we iodine quite a bit just because it's fast. We're usually, as long as it's wet, right? I don't mind the taste of iodine; it doesn't bother me at all. We iodine quite a bit if we're on elk and pursuing bugling bulls. Then I'll always water up because I can't stop the drink. And the iodine has come in really handy to be able to just take platypus, fill it up, throw 2 tabs in, and it's in my pack in like 2 minutes. And tops from the time I drop my pack. And when I'm on bulls and bugling bulls, I always make sure when we initiate that pursuit or that game, don't want to stop for water. That's when I will absolutely make sure I'm watered up as we're on bugling bulls. So that's kind of my water system, my pack, and then as far as sleeping on the elk, a lot of times we just don't have a choice. The timber's so thick and so heavy, and we deal with a lot of blowdown that a lot of times we're not going to get walked on. The elk aren't going to show up 30 yards from us and wind us in the middle of the night, typically. So we'll back out a little bit, but we would much prefer, I would say, you gain more by being within earshot of them than you lose by being too close. So if I'm weighing that out, I'm probably sleeping a lot tighter to the elk than most people. And, I don't know how many bulls, it's been, but I've shot a handful of them, including the biggest bull I killed. Man, I shot it with, seconds of shooting light left. When you can hunt them until dark, that's a really real big benefit. In fact, I'll just share this hunting story. In 2012, I drew a great tag. In Washington, if you put in for some of the easier units, by the way, you can draw a tag on fairly good frequency. I think a lot of my friends put in for units that are a little more coveted, and I tend to draw a little bit more often.
Yeah.
So I'd rather draw the marginal units and work a little harder and get a tag at double frequency. But we hunted the same bulls day 4, and man, I'm not a bad elk caller. I'd say I'm above average. I grew up with Joel Turner. I think a lot of people know that he's a great elk calling coach, 2-time world champion. I remember in 2009, Joel stopped by my house and gave me we spent about 3 hours in my garage, and I realized I was doing a lot of the elk calling, not just the strategies, but the sounds were backwards as far as their cadence and tone. And in 2009, he set me straight and started having a lot more success. But this was in 2012, and we tried to call this bull in, or this bull in for like three days. And we had really good setups, and we sound really good, and everything's going great. And we felt like we created the appropriate situations for the bull to come in, and just could not drag this big old nasty bull in. And on I think it was the evening of the 4th day, we were not hunting a long ways from the Jeep, but we decided, I think, for the second night in a row, even though we were only hunting a half mile from the road, we're throwing our sleeping bags in our packs. We're sleeping down there so that we can hunt to the last minute, and then we can hear where they're at. So we said, we're not calling no matter how much this bull bugles, because there was a couple of bulls in there, and it was like World War III every evening in there. We decided we weren't going to call until like dark. And we sat there for like 3 hours listening to these bulls bugle at like 300, I mean, close, Dan, like a couple hundred yards away. I mean, right there, right? I mean, you could practically hear them breathing, and grunt, and plunking. I mean, we were tight on these elk. And I waited until about 10 minutes before it dark. I mean, to the point where it was going to be marginal. And then I moved in on that bull and just imitated a cow and heat and a bull blunking, and moved right in on that bull. And he came in, I mean, it was heavy timber, so it was already pretty dark. But I mean, I shot it like at dark. And shot him at 11 yards. And that bull ended up green scoring 365. I don't know what it didn't measured after the drying period or official or anything like that. Maybe it was only 360, I don't know. But it was a great big one. And anyway, I shot it at dark just from purely having the diligence to, even though it was a truck-oriented hunt, just having the diligence to throw the sleeping bag on the back and stay and hunt until after dark. Because I think, I hunted a lot of wilderness stuff, but I would consider that one semi-backcountry. I mean, we were sleeping, had our sleeping bags on our back. But that one I suffered more sleep deprivation and more exhaustion on that truck-oriented hunt than I ever have on a bivvy hunt, I think. I mean, we were up at 3 a.m., trying to find, bulls bugling and trying to locate elk on that hunt, and ended up working out. And then we shot a fantastic bull at dark on day 4. But for me, that system of being able to hunt till dark has been critical.
Yeah, I dig everything you're saying. And some of the herd bulls I've killed have been just straight up going for it, getting after it, because it's about to be dark, like we're talking within 10, 15 minutes, but the wind is so damn predictable. It's coming straight down, and you can get really aggressive. And it's pretty fun hunting a big bull or sneaking in on him when the wind is in your favor and it's not going to get swirly. You get some pretty, not always, but generally speaking, a lot of those last 10 minutes of light, that wind has got, good odds that wind's going to hold true, and then you can really do what you need to do. So that's awesome, man. Let's talk about, I want to learn a little bit more about how you close the deal. I did a little bit of cyber creeping or scouting on you, but most of the pictures I've ever seen have been a text from our mutual friend before we met, and it would just be like, honestly, like, okay, who is this guy? Like, and just be like, I just get text, I think at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 years to where I was like, okay, give me his number, I want to get to know him. No joke. And dude, you've killed a lot of big bulls, and way more than your average guy. And my podcast is about shortening that damn learning curve that's so steep. So let's go next level and kind of give us like how you close the deal on elk, whether it's solo or if you have a calling partner. Not how you find elk, but how you close the deal on elk once you found them.
Yeah, I subscribe pretty hard to Turner's, BCC, BCC strategy, the bull calling cow's bugle. I've had that work on a handful of occasions, but it doesn't work every time. But typically if it's a satellite bull, we're using cow calls, and I've probably failed a lot. I've certainly failed a lot more than I've succeeded. And I think I've learned a lot more retrospectively on, less calling, less calling, more situation. Like breaking sticks, being noisy. Elk are typically movers. They don't call from their beds. So I move quite a bit while I'm calling to create the idea of an elk moving. I shot a bull in 2009. It was a fantastic bull, and it was solo. I've been by myself on maybe half my elk I've called in myself. I've had partners with me. But this particular bull, I was trucking along just doing my locate bugle thing, and it was so distant that I thought it was a bird. And I was like, man, that's a bird. And, I'm like, yeah, I get a little, I'm like, yeah, I'll kind of angle down the hill. I'm like, that's got to be a bird. It was like noon, shouldn't have been a bull bugle at that time of day anyway. hear the bull bugling, and finally I moved down on it, and I try to get to where, obviously I play the wind, but I'm okay with the crosswind. I read an article years ago, as I try to soak up everything elk hunting I can, and the writer proposed that, a crosswind is typically better because the bulls are going to be more confident. When it's a direct, they don't like walking directly with the wind. And so a crosswind is okay with me. And I remember getting a crosswind, and it was the first time that I remember in my young bow hunting career, I guess, I remember really thinking about the setup and the terrain. I always want some type of topo feature, that the bull has to come close enough in order to see the calling location. And that also allows me to be a lot more nimble and maneuverable if I need to make adjustments as I hear the bull approaching. So if he doesn't come in on a rope, which they usually don't, then I can make any adjustments because I've got that topographic feature, that rise, knoll, or swale to work with. But on that elk, I just remember him, he was downhill from me, and I got this topo feature in front of me, but I thought about several things, and that was one, I needed an escape route. If the bull came in, hung up, that I was able to walk back off of that spot and have an escape route to reposition myself in the event he didn't come in. Then I could escape, move across the hill, reposition, and try him in a different spot. Because, a cow elk sitting there cow calling from one spot and staying in that one spot, we've all tried that. It usually doesn't work. Every once in a while it does, but those situations seem to be less frequent. But I remember setting up on that spot, and I had utilized a very large tree in front of me, big fir tree in front of me, so that I could stand right behind the fir tree, and depending on which side he was going to come out, I had complete mobility to move. Well, the bull came in and stopped at about 60 yards, and I could just see him sitting there, and at 60 yards, and he was definitely hot. He bugled his way up, and then as soon as he turned around and went back down the hill, I just remember having that escape route of being able to go, okay, he's not going to come into this spot, but I backed up, moved across side hill because I was well concealed, dropped in exactly to where he had just been, and was able to pull him back in using kind of a cow calling and glunking, and he came back in on a rope, and again I set up on a topo feature. But it seems like rarely when I've been successful has it been the first location that I stop and call from. Mm-hmm. I almost always have to reposition to create that illusion of moving elk, and it's typically a situation where I've got a cow of interest and a cattle bull combo. In that bull, I create a situation of urgency for that bull to come back in. But it seems like there's almost always a reposition that takes place, and that's a big tip, I think. For folks listening is be thinking about your mobility. If you're pinned down, you don't have too many options. He's going to sit there and stare at the bush where the cow call sound's coming from, and he'll stand there and check it out from about as far away as he can, and then he'll lose interest, walk back down the hill, and the gig's up usually. The element of a rare and unique opportunity is kind of evaporated at that point.
No, that's textbook. That's exactly what happens. So providing yourself some options, having, basically being cognizant that you cannot put yourself in a pinned down situation. I love that you said using the terrain and having an escape route, so to speak, to put yourself into several different positions. And there's a whole art to calling solo. I've tried to talk on it quite a bit on some of my Q&A videos, but it has nothing to do with standing still when you're calling solo. You're doing twice the work, but it's pretty fun too. So when you're calling with a partner, kind of there's so many tips out there, but let's just get to, I like talking about the mistakes that you made early on calling, and maybe some guys will catch on quicker going, oh shit, I do that. I need to stop doing that. So what are some of the mistakes guys do early on calling tips that they should stop doing?
Walking backwards, trying to drag an elk back, moving up, locating the bull, and then you hear the bull bugle, and you're like, okay, you're the shooter, you stay here. And then you walk back and start calling, and this is one that it sounds so stupid simple when we say it on a podcast like this, but that moving up and locating and then walking back and calling from further away, you just pulled yourself out of the red zone. You're no longer relevant. You know, as soon as you move back, you think, oh, I'm going to move back 50 yards, 80 yards, whatever it is. We're going to drag them right past you. That works on the Primos videos because they've got like 5 callers back there and, you know, just a super horny bull.
Yeah.
Yes. But we watch that on television, and it just seems to me it doesn't work like that, because as soon as you move back, you become less relevant. And I've tried over the years dragging elk back, and it's great for keeping them vocal and entertaining them, because now you're at a safe distance and they can bugle, you can cow call, and vice versa. And then eventually you'll start bugling, and he'll keep bugling. But actually getting him to come in and becoming relevant is really hard when you do that. So anymore, I'd say, as you know, my hunting partner and I have, you know, gained more and more experience, we typically like to stay tighter. We stay together, and we can also communicate a lot better. We don't carry any radios or anything like that. We've just found it to be a real distraction. So we can communicate a lot quicker if we're direct line of sight, you know, and we set up, you know, a little bit better on those topo features. We can also cow call, complement each other, and sound like multiple elk, and again create, I'm a big fan of Elk Nut, if you can tell. I just think he's a great teacher. But creating a situation that doesn't exist is really the root of what you're doing. If you're just an elk, that's not quite enough. If you create a situation, now you've catalyzed a situation that requires some urgency on the bull's part. So if there's a cow in heat, you know, and you've got raking and you've got some type of blunking or bull calling cow bugle, where there's, you know, a couple of sounds in a couple of different locations that are close enough to be relevant, I think that you increase your odds, and the volatility of the bull seems to increase as well. An elk just bugling back at you a lot of times is not necessarily a killable elk, but that volatility gets much greater when you are more relevant, you're closer. And a couple of times I've just found that, like the one, I think I mentioned this about the one bull where I saw him come into a particular spot and then he went back down the hill. Well, once I got to that spot that he had been, he felt that was safe terrain, and he immediately came back in. He was like, hey, I was just there, and it appeared safe, and immediately comes back in. So multiple callers, staying tighter together, being able to communicate better, we just found that to be much more effective. And then solo calling, constantly being on the move, man, there's some definite risk and reward there. I'm probably at fault of being, you know, like a lot of guys at fault of being too aggressive. I wish I'd be once I'm in that red zone, I wish I was more patient. 15 to 20 minutes to a hunter is eternity. 15 to 20 minutes for an elk is a blink of an eye. You know, I've been able to sit there and watch them, and, you know, watch them looking for me, and my God, those big animals are patient. So I don't know if any of that, you know, resonates with you, Dan, or your experience, but you know, once you're in that red zone, you've got to be willing to be patient.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, these are just great things. Now, I don't have a lot of experience hunting with people calling success-wise. I found most of my success going solo, and you know, probably because I'm pretty particular on who I'd hunt with. As far as I've talked about this before, but I just go at a different pace than some guys, and I don't need a lot of sleep for the month of September. Literally don't need it. I pay the price in October, but what is it about? I don't know who you hunt with, but I know you have a partner. Like, how did you meet your partner, or what is some good advice for someone to look into a legit hunting partner when it comes to the elk woods? Because that can make or break a hunt.
Yeah, it's just like a marriage, dude. I mean, there's so much give and take, and for my hunting partner, it's number one. I've got one guy that I hunt most of the time with, my buddy Connor, and I hunt with, you know, one other guy, like a little bit, but you know, with he and I mean, it's shared values. You know, we love the wilderness. We don't have, you know, no ego based on, you know, success. If we don't get an elk, we don't get an elk. So our egos don't inflate and deflate based on whether we succeed or not. We want to have number one, a top-notch wilderness hunting experience where we give it our all. We come home beat up, bruised, sore, and shut out. You know, that's how it was. But we value a lot of the same things, and that's just that that remote wilderness experience pursuing help. Just pure wilderness experience. We want things quiet. We don't want to see other people. We spend almost all of our time off trail. So we bushwhack. We like cross country. We get off trails immediately. In fact, we don't even park at trailheads some of the time. We can park on a road and go. And that might mean a wilderness hunt where we just literally don't use trails. It's slower, but we find a lot of quirky little spots that a lot of folks don't do, I think. But the hard work, my buddy was a hotshot firefighter for like a bazillion years, like 10 years or something like that. So he's really comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's wet, cold, bruised, mashed up feet. I've watched that dude tape his feet, like his toes and stuff. I'm like, God, that's got to be really painful.
Yeah.
And I don't have foot issues like he does, but there's, for him, we're, really different. I'm like 5'9", 170 pounds, and he's like 6'3", 235 pounds. And so we're like, kind of antonyms of each other. I move a little bit lighter and quicker, and, I'm like, marathon runner, and, he's an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
But he doesn't struggle to carry, 100 pounds on his back. So we complement each other really well, but for him, we're a good example that two guys, from completely different, physical statures can hunt together and cover massive amounts of wilderness country, just because he's a grinder, he works really hard, he can carry weight, climbs over deadfall like a champ, all that kind of stuff. But you have to have shared values. You have to be looking to get the same things out of the hunt. Otherwise you're not gonna have a symbiotic relationship that's give and take. If he misses a shot or gets a shot, I'm equally as happy for him, and I wholeheartedly mean that. We don't care who scores or whose turn it is or anything else. We just kind of know, who's up to bat, how to work it, what to do, and I run out of food sometimes, and he doesn't. He runs out of food sometimes, and I don't. We share, and we're both okay drinking coffee with pine needles and leftover top ramen in it.
That's awesome.
That's kind of the test. When you got moss and pine needles in your coffee, if the guy bitches about it, that's not a potential hunting partner for me.
There it is. That's your filter right there.
Yeah, there's the filter. You got to be able to live dirty, man. So. That's, for us, we're very different, but, I wouldn't hunt with anybody else. So, just great dude. But yeah, very different. But again, it's like shared values. Like, we think the same stuff's cool, the same views, the same giant tree. You're like, holy crap, look at that tree. I got to take a picture of that.
Yeah.
Without annoying hunting partner, that's just a cool part of the trip. Shared give and take, man.
Those little quirks need to be, stuff that you guys appreciate about each other. Dude, you've dropped some pretty good elk knowledge. I just want to talk more about elk hunting really with you, because I know that you've just got so much knowledge to drop, but I try to keep these under an hour, so we have to sneak a little bit away from the elk hunting tips, but I want to get into more of the shit that I just get after, is the discipline, the fitness, and building mental toughness. All those intangibles that basically you got 11 months to do something about it. I know a little bit about your background, ultra marathoner, but give us a breakdown as to not only your philosophy, but what you actually do, whether it be nutrition or training or whatever it takes to get mentally stronger the other 11 months out of the year in the name of better elk hunting.
Well, I got into pretty serious distance running there for a while. I was told that if I could just run ultra marathons, I'd kill more elk, and the two definitely aligned with one another. It's not the only way. It's really not whether you can run long ways. That's ridiculous. It's just about building that diligence to be better every day, and hold yourself accountable. Hold yourself accountable and hold yourself to a higher standard. And that comes with your diet, your work ethic, getting out of bed. If you're going to do something like, competitive CrossFitting, or whatever it is, I don't care if you're a swimmer or whatever, if you got a couple of goals and you have to hold yourself, to that standard, chances are you're not staying up late drinking, you're eating well, you're taking care of yourself, and you have the diligence to do all all of the things that are required to support that goal. And if that goal is to, be a more fit hunter so that you can be successful, or frankly just enjoy your hunts more, and be able to go, hey, let's go to that mountaintop. Okay, I'm game, great, and not kill yourself on the way up. Whatever you do for fitness, that there's a lot of different approaches that a person can take. If that's your goal, you're going to have to fully support it with your diet, your sleep, simply taking care of your body, things like stretching, and then all the little stuff that goes beyond that from, I kind of go all in, man. I fall asleep in bed looking at topo maps of places I've never been to and may never go to at night.
Definitely.
But when you have that goal, it seems like all of the little things that go towards it, it's a conglomeration of effort. And so if you're into ultramarathoning, great. If you're into, CrossFit, great. If you're into swimming or whatever it is, whatever that is, chances are if you're diligent about it and you do it every day, everything's going to fall in place from shooting your bow and everything else. So I went running for quite a few years. Now I'm kind of tapering off of that just because I kind of went there, did it, and, had some success, definitely found out what I was made of or what I'm capable of. Right now, as far as fitness goals, I'm kind of in between stuff. I'm still a little bit of a runner. I'm still doing some, home circuit training. For me personally, I get really bored, really easy with different stuff. So I do a lot of mix of running and home circuit training. I got a pretty good home gym. But I think, one of the simplest things that I do that helps me not lose my edge is I got just a really burly home pull-up bar, both at my office and in my home. I got a really good garage gym at home. And that thing, you don't walk by it without, ripping out some reps. And on those days where I've got long work days or whatever else, you can always find time to do some, some bar exercises, all sorts of different, different types of pull-ups or ab exercises and things. So for the busy guy, that's a big advantage, just having a good pull-up bar accessible all the time and not ignoring it. I think that's a really quick way for people who are, run busy lives with kids and jobs and things like that to maintain fitness, especially for your, spine, abdomen, everything. I think your body holds together really well when you can do something on the bar every single day. Right now, we're kind of in the winter months, so I'm not running a ton, but I do an elliptical trainer in the morning, watch Netflix, then do circuit training in addition to that, be it planks, pull-ups. The go-to grinder workout for me, like when I feel like a chump and I'm like, man, I'm getting soft, I'm like 200 burpees. And you're like, okay, just grind it out. It's simple, it's rainless, it's brutal. The first 100 are kind of your, slow, you warm up slow, and then you do the next 100 per time. And to me, everybody has time for that workout. That does not take a lot of time, and anybody can do it. So if you can't get to the gym, the 200 burpee thing for me is kind of my benchmark. When I feel like I'm getting a little sloppy, I go back to that. The other one for me is, I do a lot of guiding and outfitting, and so I travel a lot, and so I don't get to a regular gym. I travel for work so much, and I still guide quite a bit. The other one's 150 chirpies. If you're like, oh, I don't got time for much, but I can start that slow, warm up easy, and you can do that. That's going to be a killer workout for me. That's another one that, I think for, people who can't get to the gym regularly, whatever their schedule is, maybe it's just a season of their life. That's another one too that I personally rely on when I'm starting to, feel like I need to get back to some basics, I guess. And then as far as diet and stuff, there's so much good information out there. I don't think anybody really has an excuse not to eat clean anymore. If you care about a goal, and that goal is to be, a more efficient hunter and enjoy your wilderness hunts more, there's so much information on clean eating, out there that I really can't speak to that. I mean, there's just so much good information, regarding that. Eggs and oatmeal every day for breakfast for me for the most part. Protein with maca and turmeric root in it for a quick shake 'em up smoothie. I don't even need to use a blender for that.
Yep.
Drink that on my way to work. Take some vitamins. Hit the Mountain Ops Yeti pre-workout. I'm gonna do. I need some pump up. other than that, I don't know what to say. I mean, just don't be sloppy. And don't drink too much beer. Don't overeat.
Well, I mean, those chirpies you're talking about, those 150 chirpies, that's a burpee to a chin up, right? That's what you're calling those?
Yes.
That's no joke, man. That's legit.
No, I'm not doing that all the time though. That's one where you're like, you've been lazy. You're like, oh, we need some discipline. You're like,
yeah.
Okay, 150 chirpies, and it's a grind, man, but you can get through it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, necessarily for time, but you get through that, and you're like, okay, we're leveled again, right?
Yeah. Rent is due. 150 chirpies go. Well, Joe, like, what about, like, honestly, you don't have to be in shape, and I am the first one to admit this. You really don't have to be in shape to hunt the mountains, but you cannot be a mental little person. I don't think I can say midget on this thing, but you have to be a mental giant. So how can people utilize this fitness part to build mental toughness? Because at the end of the day, I'd rather hunt with somebody who's just mentally sharp and not faded by all the bad things that go on and all the valleys, because there's very few peaks in hunting, especially with a bow. Like, how are you building this mental toughness? I know you weren't born with it. I sure wasn't. Like, how are you doing that?
Well, so here's something I want to leave listeners with. Fitness is like, and I say these things on this podcast like I'm perfect or something. Shoot, I'm not. I mean, I'm as susceptible to stumbling as much as the next guy on missing workouts and eating pizza and that kind of stuff. But fitness is like brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth, it's good for you. You need to do it in order to take care of yourself, and so you brush your teeth. And fitness, I'm not going to pretend I just wake up every morning, I'm like, hey, let's do a bunch of burpees. That's not really how it works. I'm like, I got to do some burpees, man. I'm like, I got to get this done. I got to go for a run. I got to get some circuit training in. It's like brushing your teeth, and it's more about the consistency and discipline. Workouts don't have to be long, but you need to be disciplined and take care of yourself if you want to enjoy the same highs that the guy who is, if you can eliminate fitness from the equation, get yourself in shape, and that way it's one less thing you got to worry about. My hunting partner, again, he's the opposite of me. You talked about being mentally sharp. There are so many skills that go into being a successful backcountry hunter. And, for like, he and I are different. He brings skills to the table that guys can learn, and it's complimented by fitness. The dude's in great shape, but he doesn't move like I do, but his navigation is incredible. I mean, he's just an amazing backcountry navigator. He can glance at a GPS and fill up a map and tell me what's growing on that hill, and that we're going to take a different route because there's going to be too much blowdown, even though we've never been there before.
Mm-hmm.
There are all sorts of skills that go into being a backcountry hunter. Fitness isn't the only one, but I think it speaks to the discipline that people have. Is if they're really interested in it and they care about it, they're going to make an effort to do all of the little things that go into a hunt. They're going to make sure that they're a good navigator, they're a good map interpreter, they've scouted well, they've prepared for the pack out. They've got their a couple of different plans laid out in the event they shoot elk in different places, and maybe that's having buddies, that can pack, knowing an outfitter, or having your own stock like I do. There's definitely a lot of components, but I think if you can't get just a little bit of fitness into it, you're probably not going to be very successful with those other things either.
All right, man. Well, let's transition to like the last part, which is, I'm kind of the most excited about, is the entrepreneurial spirit that you have, being, a guy who's 38. Sounds like you're pretty successful. You definitely have enough time to do all the hunting that you want to get done, or at least all of Washington's elk season, and you're traveling the world and stuff like that. Man, I talk on this podcast about discipline as it pertains to fitness and delayed gratification as it pertains to elk hunting, but we both talked about the autonomy of your time being one of the number one things for a successful elk hunter, but discipline with your finances and the financial freedoms and stuff like that. Walk us through your philosophy on how guys could be more inspired, or any little nuggets of information on things that you have done now that you're 38, going on 39, that you've done professionally, that you've learned as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, that could maybe help some of maybe the younger guys listening that, maybe just got their first credit card, or they bought that awesome new truck, but they didn't pay cash for it, and they're going to start making some dumb decisions that we've all done. Let's talk about that kind of stuff real quick.
I think it's just think, everybody, you really have to keep yourself grounded, obviously, in order to be successful. For me, I've accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and for me, that has solved, I didn't come to God until later in life, but for me, that made so many other things in my life just fall into place and got so much easier once I accepted God. So I didn't grow up in church or anything like that. That came much later, but for me, it was like once that happened, like my professional life, my family life, my marriage, everything else started to make so much more sense. And, the decisions at work that I had to make in order to direct our business, became much more clear. My marriage became so much easier because I understood what it was, what it meant to be the supportive husband and father. And so, making sure that my marriage came first, in an order of operations, marriage first, obviously God, marriage first, then work came third. Once my marriage, we never had any real rough spots, but it's never perfect. It's not always been perfect. But once I had God leading my life and directing my life, and I became the husband that I was supposed to be, getting hunting time became a lot easier because my wife began to understand me better and know that I needed that, and I need that every fall in order to complete myself spiritually. I need that escape. I need that time away. I need that wilderness trip. I need to hunt. So, taking care of your marriage, getting yourself grounded spiritually, whatever that might be for somebody, it made my work decisions a lot easier, and our business, it seemed to me, at least my understanding of it, I haven't asked my business partners this, but my success at work became a lot better once that happened because I started to make every decision towards a greater good and was much less selfish and more giving in my leadership, with my staff. I feel like it improved exponentially. Began to care about people more, lead them better, and take them in a direction that was, maybe a lot of my younger staff. I hired tons of guys in their early 20s, coming out of college, a lot of them in college.
Yeah.
And they may not work here at Reds forever, but they're going to work here for a period of time. And I really began to take it serious that if they're going to work here, I want to leave them with all the skills and the right leadership as to what an adult man dad is supposed to look like and do.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't sound too corny.
No.
But when I started to do that, we began to be able to recruit and hire and maintain better staff. And I'm not attributing all of our success or work certainly to me, but it seems like for me and the guys that I direct and hire and lead, our business began to improve. It began to thrive for many, many reasons in addition to those. But you get yourself grounded spiritually, take care of your family, and the work decisions that you have to make, the strategies, the maneuvers, and things like that. I tend to win a lot higher percentage of those now than I was, say, 10 years ago. And a lot of that's attributed to just business experience. But if those things can be helpful for somebody, the other thing that helped our business is I got into YouTube, instructional videos a long time ago, right? I mean, like 2007, back when YouTube is, a drop of what it is today. And I joked that I was one of the only guys that had kids in the mortgage at the time, so I was willing to get on video and put myself out there and explain things and promote things, but a lot of other guys didn't want the scrutiny of their peers of being on video. And now I've got a YouTube channel with like 6 million views or something like that. It's a lot. And we've been successful, and that's really been the umbilical cord of our e-commerce business, is being able to go, yeah, I might look like a cheesehead a lot of the time, but I'm willing to get on there for the betterment of our business and to support my career. I'm willing to get on there. No hype, no baloney, just good instructional information that hopefully, a neophyte or even an intermediate or perhaps an advanced, fisherman might, learn from.
Yeah.
And that really catapulted us, in our e-commerce business. But just being able to go, yeah, you know what, I You know, I got to answer the comments. There's always some haters out there.
Oh
I
yeah.
guess when you start getting critics, it means you made it, I suppose. But you know, being able to put yourself out there and be subject to some criticism, I think, is another really important thing that helped give our business enough success for then me to be able to have the latitude to pursue, you know, my other dreams and passions of hunting and other recreation.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, 2007 is early for YouTube, and I liked everything you said there. I mean, that's perfect. I will end with that. But I mean, dude, we should be friends. I wish you lived closer, but Ellensburg's not too far. I hope to meet you in person and definitely maybe even share a campfire someday. But I love everything. We kind of shotgunned a bunch of good stuff in here, and this is what Elkshape's all about to me. Is man, I wanted to operate this podcast just to help people on the learning curve, get them inspired, and get them excited to go find the best version of themselves. And I feel like you dropped knowledge bombs left and right, man. So where can dudes and ladies find you on the World Wide Web as far as either your website or your YouTube channel or social media?
Yeah, so, you know, Red's Fly Shop, we're an outfitter in the Yakima Canyon. Our primary business is, you know, fly fishing outfitting, and that's both in the Pacific Northwest and all over the world. You know, I mentioned we do a lot of travel planning for folks that want to go do that bucket list trip in some faraway place. We do a ton of upland bird hunting. We have a 15,000 acre ranch here adjacent to the property, and we're looking at other ranches for upland bird hunting. And we do mule deer hunting as well. Not a lot of that, you know. That's definitely not why I'm mentioning it. It's just what we do. But see us at redsflyshop.com. We have a fancy resort here in Ellensburg that's great. You know, very family oriented, outdoorsman oriented place where they can come. You know, park mama and the kids at the pool. You know, dad can go shoot some shotguns and go fly fishing. But you can see us at redsflyshop.com. We also have Instagram, redsflyshop, and follow us on Facebook. You know, see what we do. If anybody listens to this podcast lives in the Northwest, we're very relevant to what you do. Follow us, Red's Fly Shop, on Facebook, and you can see all about what we're doing all the time. And I operate all the social media channels, so there's some, you know, I try to mix in the hunting stuff with fishing stuff all the time.
That's awesome. Do you? Where can people see pictures of these awesome bulls that I saw? Is it on Facebook or is this going to be private?
You're going to get them texted. You're going to get them texted to you from your buddy.
Okay, so you're going to have to email me one picture that I can show, but it could be a raghorn for all I care. But just I want something, your favorite elk hunting picture or whatever. But just so people know, I will vouch for you. I've seen the bulls. And that's why you're on this, basically, because I'm all about those blue-collar dudes that not necessarily are sponsored or in the hunting industry, will have a kind of an agenda or don't hunt very much public. That's not me. We're going to, like, the end users. And the end users are the ones that buy the products. And they're the guys that hunt the public land and the wildernesses like you. And hopefully they listen to this and get inspired to learn how to bivouac hunt, because it's a huge advantage. It's scary. It's intimidating. But if I can do it and Joe can do it, anyone can do it, right?
Yeah, just work hard. You know, have the right goal in mind, and the killing will take care of itself.
Cool, Joe. Well, we'll wrap this up, man. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to turn this thing off, but I'll talk to you here in a second. Hold on.